Living off-grid means escaping the hustle of busy city life and settling down in beautiful, scenic places surrounded by peace, nature, and of course, freedom. But to live off-grid, you need 5 bare necessities. The main one is shelter, and a narrowboat is a great option because you can use that to explore the land. Secondly, you need a source of clean water. Third, you need a way of getting rid of all of that toilet and grey waste. That brings us to number 4, cooking and heating. We need a way to stay warm in the winter months. And finally, we need a way to generate our own electricity so we can enjoy today's modern comforts. The first step to living off-grid is electricity. That's why we're going to be generating ours with this massive solar panel. Well, actually, we're going to be using 2. After speaking with Onboard Energy, this is the maximum solar panels we're going to be able to get on the roof practically, because we also need a life ring, ropes, some sort of walk ball to get onto the bank. So we are going to need more space on that roof as well as the solar panels. These are the brackets we're going to be using on our solar panels. So underneath here it's just a hollow shell. So we're going to be drilling through, mounting that like this, and we're going to bolt down into our boat, and that's going to give us a little bit of movement so we can change the angle. We're going to be doing all of that using riv nuts. If you are going to attempt drilling out your solar panels, make sure there's nothing behind. For us, the tracks were completely clear, so we're okay to drill some holes and put in our riv nuts. For anyone that doesn't know what a riv nut is, this is your insert. So we pre-drill our holes like we have in our solar panels. We use this tool. It compresses this little insert and makes it so that we can bolt in and out as many times as you like for easy removability. These have been around for years and years, but we've only been using them quite recently, and they are so handy. And because there's 2 sides to every solar panel, we're going to do it twice. The idea is we're going to put one fixing in the centre of each side. That way we can pivot the panels, aiming them towards the sun when this thing is moored up. With them done, we're going to get our brackets fitted and take them up onto the roof. This is where the riv nuts come in so handy. We can fit these, take them up, and if we want to take these back off, we can, because now they're removable.
That is the solar panels all prepped up. We're going to jump up on the roof and start getting them installed.
We will probably not be installing them. I will probably be installing them, but at least Brad helped out getting them up onto the roof.
Now me and Phil have got to decide where's best to give you, one of you guys, the maximum amount of space on the roof without it looking odd. So here's a little montage of me and Phil sliding these things around.
The problem we've got is the hooks, the vents, and the fact that I don't like things being uneven. So I want it to look nice and even on our boat. It needs to look good, but it also needs to operate well. So that's what we're trying to figure out here. We've gone back and forth and we've ended up with this. So we've got them central, one back here and one at the front of the boat. Once we was happy with the position, 1 for functionality and 2 for the visual look, we can get the holes marked up in the roof of our boat and drill them out.
We are going for the same technique as the brackets on the side of the solar panel, but we need to make this waterproof. So that is where we're going to add some sealant. We've got our insulation intact, that's why I was being so careful. We're going to completely fill this with silicone, overfill it, and then we're going to put in our riv nut. This is going to create a seal around the edge, so any water that gets up to the riv nut shouldn't get into our boat. But we also need to consider the threads themselves, because our riv nut inserts are actually hollow. So with the first one done, we get on with drilling out and fitting the rest of them. The nut cert is in and it's
sealed, so we've siliconed underneath. Next thing we want to seal is the bolt going in. Got a washer on top, a little O-ring. I'm going to feed it through the bracket and then I'm going to put another one on the bottom. That way it's got a rubber O-ring sealing the middle. We shouldn't have any water ingress using this little method. So me and Chris get the first panel slid over the rib nuts and get it bolted down before moving on to panel number 2.
And as easy as that, the solar panels are on.
And they are a massive part of being off-grid. Now we have a way of generating electricity when the engine's not running. Another important step to living off-grid is your heating, and lucky for us, Onboard Energy has hooked one of you guys up with an Urbaspatcher diesel heater by Espar, and they've even put it on this fancy little board, so all we've got to do is mount this onto this. What we don't show is the hours of discussion going back and forth about where we can put our diesel heater, because we need to remember the expansion vessel that you'll see us fit later needs to be higher than the pump. Eventually we decided to put it just below the gas locker, and I'm not drilling holes here, I'm just using the drill bit to mark out where I'm going to be putting on some studs. That way this is also fully removable. Even though it's nice and hot this time of year, it's easy to forget that our winters can be quite severe. So this diesel heater is going to come in very, very handy. With our studs mounted, we get on with drilling holes in our board. That way we can slide it on and off when we like. And we need to make sure that when we are drilling, we're not hitting any cables on the back. We then put on a nut and washer. That way we can adjust the void that we leave behind our board. We've got our diesel heater mounted. Next job is the expansion tank, which is this part here. There's only 2 rules we need to follow. 1, we want it accessible, and 2, it needs to be higher than this pump here. So let's get it installed. Although once this is filled, you shouldn't really need to get to this. We need to make sure it is still accessible in case we ever need to drain the fluids, replace the fluids. So we're trying to think about all these things ahead of time, so whoever ends up with this boat doesn't have any problems in the future. And again, we're using studs, so this is completely removable. Here's a job that we didn't think we was going to have to do, but unfortunately there is a small problem with our engine, which means it's got to come out. So cue the Manotaur. Unfortunately our engine does have to come out, but fortunately our landlord Penny has a Manotaur and she can drive it. So this thing has come in so handy. I don't even know how we would have got this engine in and out without it. So we get it strapped up for the second time and start removing it. But this time we've got all of the lovely paintwork to contend with. So we're just hoping that we don't cause any damage on the way out. Luckily for us, it goes without a problem and we get it sat on some block work. I think I've got all the bolts out, so now I'm just going to try and pop it off. And what we're popping off is the oil sump, because that is the problem we're having with the oil leak. I've now got some instant gasket, and all I'm going to do with this, I'm going to fill up the whole gaps everywhere, and I'm also going to put a solid bead all the way around and then block this on, and I'm going to do the same on the top. This was brought up when we rebuilt this engine, but we thought because we had a new gasket we was going to be okay, but unfortunately we wasn't. So the original oil sump is actually bowed and bent just from the age of it, so it's not fully sealing on the corners, but it's an easy fix. It's just the fact that we have to take the engine out to do it. But we get it repaired, and in comes Penny to slide it back in. While the engine's dangling in the air, let me tell you, it is 29 degrees and I am very hot. That's why I'm going to be drinking one of YFood's fruity flavours, and this is brand new cherry. And they say men can't multitask. Here I am drinking my lunch and moving the engine back into position without a hitch.
Penny, I think that's the fastest we've got that engine in. Very skilled driver.
I've just jumped outside of the boat and realised we haven't even unwrapped our anodes yet, so I'm going to do that because I think it's going to be quite satisfying. The only reason these have been left is because we've got so many other jobs to do, it's just easy to forget what you was previously doing.
In the summer, me and Phil don't really fancy stop to eat a massive meal. We end up working all the way through and get way less productive towards the end of the day. YFood is the solution because it's basically a meal in a bottle that we can drink and carry on working throughout the day.
Engine is in its position, not its final position, but we'll cover that in a minute. Next job is the stern tube, which is one of those.
Which we're going to replace because the old one is extremely worn.
This may have been leaking, we don't quite know, but it's better to replace it because the old one was completely worn out. So what we do, we add some thread seal and then it's twisted into the boat all the way up to the stop at the back. YFood is full of vitamins and minerals, 27 grams of protein, and it's fruity and refreshing, which is perfect for when you're stood in the middle of a random field. Where even am I going? While I was trying to find my way back to the unit, Chris got on with installing the stuffing gland, or is it a stuffing box? Not quite sure, you'll have to let me know on that one. The gland is installed, now we get to put in our shiny new prop shaft.
If you are a new customer, YFood are offering you guys at home 20% off the entire range. Also, if you're an existing customer like us, you get 10% off. And this is a limited edition cherry, which we recommend you should try with our discount code across the screen. Oh, there's Phil. Why are you hiding in the gas locker? This is the bit we are putting on next, which is an upgrade, because the last one was smacked on with a key. This one actually tightens down onto the shaft down here, which, if anything goes wrong, this one will protect the engine.
Well, it'll add additional support. So if you was to hit something with your propeller, normally that force is transferred into your gearbox. With this sort of slip coupling, it should just slip. All the new parts are installed. I wish it was as easy as just bolting it up, but it isn't, because we have this problem here. So when this boat was running, the prop shaft was like that. So that's why we've got all that extra wear. We need to get it so it's like that. And the way we do that is by adjusting the engine. We would have got away with just installing the new stuff and it probably would have lasted a couple of years at least. But again, we're trying to make this thing the best it can be. So by aligning our engine up and down and side to side, this gland and prop shaft should last 10 times at least longer. I've just moved the engine mounts. That little jiggle I just did is just to basically resettle it so I know that it's not going to move. And that has lined us up side to side like this. That is not all we need to do. The next step is this way. And we do that by adjusting the little nuts underneath. The way these mounts are designed is that there's a nut underneath the thread that comes through and then you bolt down onto it. That way you can adjust the height, so you can tip it left to right and you can also tip it up and down. So we check that the gland that we're connecting to is square to the face of the gearbox gland, and we just keep adjusting, and we're always checking how freely that prop shaft is moving. Look how freely. I'm very happy with how loose that is, so that means it's not binding anywhere. So we can get the engine permanently bolted down and on to the next job. One washer and one nylock on each mount is what holds our engine down. While we're tightening these, there is a very important step I'm taking, and that is to consistently check that prop shaft, because there might be a small void underneath these mounts and I might crush it down. So you'll see me lean over and constantly check that it's still nice and free.
I messed up pretty bad. Phil laid this lovely marine ply floor a few weeks back. I put bitumen on the back, which Phil said to me, I'm sure it don't dry. He was right, and I've messed it up, and now it creaks. like crazy. We need to repair it. And if we can't repair it, we've got to replace it. And that's going to set us back days and cost us hundreds. So let's lift up the floor to see if we can repair it.
So this isn't fully cured. It is, but it's never fully dry. Don't go hard. So it's just, you see these black marks? It's just tacking on and off. So as you're walking, you're getting that. Pretty sure I've got a good solution. These legends sent us some Dynamat for our engine bay. We're not using it yet. You'll see that later on. But we've got some extras. This stuff basically comes in big old sheets like this, and you stick it to anything that might vibrate in your engine bay, and you can use it in cars. Plan is, I've cut a little test one off the side, so a little strip, and we're going to stick that on the edges that connect to the metalwork, and that should provide enough of a barrier that we don't get any more of that sticky creaking noise. Well, that was the plan anyway. So we tried it on one board to see if this plan was actually going to work, because there's no point investing more time in it if it wasn't going to remove all of that loud creaking that we had on our floor. So we got some strips added, refixed it down, and it was time to see if it had worked. We put 2 down, it is definitely going to work, so that is that problem solved. Before we do any more, it is time to look at the comment section, and the main thing that people have talked about is the weep holes that we put in. We thought we did a good job, turns out we didn't do a good job, so we need to open those up to at least 1 inch. And the second thing we're tackling is the insulation that you keep mentioning in the floor, but the problem we're having with that is this. The gap here is the biggest space we have, and by the time it comes out to here, we've got like 0 space. So we've been racking our heads for a solution, and we think we've got one. Using this insulation, we grabbed this from NGN's. It's like rock wool, but it's got like a silver jacket, so it can go to the moon and back. So we're going to be using that under the floor, and to get it under the floor, we need to pull all this up for the 15th time. No one likes to do jobs more than once, but sometimes it's better just to get on with it, because at the end of this, it's going to be for the best. So while it's up, I open up all of those weep holes, or the vents, or the drains. I don't actually know the proper name, I keep forgetting. And then we get them re-protected.
Have you ever thought about living off grid? Well, here's the perfect opportunity, because me and Phil are putting this boat up for raffle, so one of you guys can win it for just £5 per ticket. Also, me and Phil have thrown in tons of extra prizes that you can win instantly when you purchase a ticket. Where? At ukcarptech.com, links in the description below. And good luck, one of you is going to win a banging boat.
Weep holes opened, it's time to start looking at our insulation plan. And of course, I need to get someone in to help, because Brad is always slipping and dipping. So in steps James. So James and me roll out the roll, and we start cutting it down, because obviously this cannot sit on the bars where the floor's going to be. And then we have to do another step, but you'll have to wait until we take it back out of the boat to see what we do.
Now we've cut all these to size, this is open and the moisture is going to get in there, so we need to seal it with this tape. And we've got to do that with every one of them, so they're all sealed.
Thanks, James. So one of the big problems that we think we're going to have with this being under the floor is moisture, and that is the reason we're trying to reseal everything. And it's the other reason that we're using this foiled back insulation. So this should never get wet.
And that leaves us with a fully insulated, fully sealed little pillar for our boat.
I would love to pretend that we enjoyed this part, but we didn't. It was actually quite horrible to do, but it still is very important. So me, James, and even Brad started taping up all of the small sections that we had cut before reinstalling them into the boat. And I think we've come up with quite a good little plan here. This is not going to interfere with any of the ballast, and it's not going to interfere with the floor that sits on top. Plus, this looks like a spaceship. Who doesn't love a spaceship?
I'm going to move on and install the dyno mat to stop the boards creaking while we have the floor out.
Let's see how long Brad sticks at this job. 1 second. So, oh, it's been passed on to someone else. So once Brad got bored and passed that job on, they both jumped inside and started putting down the boards. And now with our insulation all down, we should be able to keep all of the heating. We're slowly moving towards starting this engine for the first time now it's in the boat. However, we're missing the part that goes from here to there. Oh look, here it is. Like the rest of the boat, we're going to be upgrading this. And even though I am a professional welder now, I've decided to get in DS Auto Works. Sometimes you need to know your limitations, and these guys really do know how to weld.
Don't know why they got me in.
We may have left out the part that it was a boat when we called Joe, but at the end of the day, they're all the same. It's an exhaust, ain't it?
Before we get started with the new exhaust, we just need to chop the flange off of the old exhaust, as we'll be reusing this one.
Rather than trying to hunt down for a new flange, it made sense just to recycle the old one.
It don't look like it's going to look brand new. What are you going to do to it?
Just clean it up, buff it up, get it looking brand new.
I'll leave it in your hands.
Brad leaving something to somebody else? What a surprise. So while Brad does something else, who knows what, Joe gets on with cleaning up the original flange, and I take out the other side because we're also going to be recycling that part.
Hello, I am Owen. I'm 6'5" with big shoes on. I'm 21 years young, and today I am down with DS Auto Works. We have cleaned up these two metals, ready to be TIG welded together.
We may have just convinced Owen to do an audition for Take Me Out, so remember guys, nor lighty, nor likey. With Owen out of the way, Joe moves in and starts tacking together our pieces. So he starts on the flange, one end, and he also does that little screwing section on the other end. So basically, we've got a start and a finish, and then we've got to connect them together. Something that we checked before we started working, when I say we, it definitely wasn't me, was how flat this flange was. And as you can see, he's just touched it on the sander, and it's not touching everywhere. That's because it's a little bit. So we're going to sand it on here, get it nice and flat. That way, when we bolt it up, it'll have a nice seal. Back in the engine bay, so far we've got our old flange welded onto our new pipework. We've also got a few of the little pie cuts tacked together. What he needs to do now is figure out where to cut this, because obviously we've got to bend over to that exhaust hole over there. While Joe's working out our exhaust, let us explain what we're actually using. So this is 2-inch stainless steel, so this thing should never rust. And what I just had in my hand was a pie cut. The reason we're using those is it keeps the internal diameter. When you bend a pipe, you actually lose some of the inside space. Not that it really matters on our engine too much, but if we're going to do something, we're going to do it right. And that is exactly what Joe's doing.
What does this bit here do?
So the flexi essentially takes the stress out of the exhaust from when the engine's moving back and forward and it's vibrating. The flexi just flexes on the exhaust and stops the flange from cracking, the welds from cracking.
You have to imagine the two parts completely separately. So our box is bolted to our boat, which isn't moving. But when the engine's running, it's vibrating. If we didn't have that flex, that would all be transferred into the welds and any of the clamps. And we don't want that. I've just pulled off the other half of the V-band we're using to explain what it is, because we assume you know, but you might not know. It's a way of connecting two pieces of pipe together. Why do we use this particular clamp?
We use a V-band because they've got a male and female either side. it creates a perfect seal. You remove it with the clamp and it's easily removable if you ever need to pull the engine out or remove the exhaust.
Which you won't have to because it's going to be lovely. This part here is getting fully welded out, so it ain't being tacked like the rest. So this is getting welded slightly different. We're doing something called back purging. So we're filling the inside up with argon, and what that does is it eradicates the oxidization that will occur if you didn't. I am a scientist. Not a scientist, but I just know a little bit about welding. So this style of welding is completely different to anything you've seen us do. This is called TIG. So TIG and MIG are completely different, and the finish on TIG, which we're doing here, looks amazing.
So I've got the start point, the end point done, and we now just need to get from here to here.
Joe does exhaust every day, so doing this is easy, but for someone like me, this would have took quite a lot of time.
If you guys could do me a favour, DS Auto is on Instagram, so if you could just whip your phone out, make sure you give him a follow, because he's trying to get to 1,000 followers.
Yeah, that's it.
What are you saying?
Yeah, definitely.
He's making one of you one of the nicest exhausts ever. That's the least you could do.
I'm happy with the fitment. I'm going to start welding it together.
What you've seen him do so far is merely tack things in place. And the reason that is because he likes to do the full weld on the bench. That way we can back purge like we explained earlier. So with everything tacked into position, we've got about 3 pieces. He can fully weld everything out, and you start to see how amazing the TIG welds look. And then we can put them back and start looking at the final welding.
That's all the individual pieces welded up on the bench. We're going to fit it all up in place, do a final tacks, and take them over to the bench and finally weld it.
You might be wondering why we did 3 individual pieces. It's because to weld all of this as a whole piece would have been a nightmare. It's easier to fully weld out the sections and then just do the final welds right at the end. Exhaust is completely welded out and finished, and if you ask me, this thing looks absolutely stunning compared to this old riggedy thing. So let's get that in the boat. Something to note here is that our old exhaust is cut. The reason is it was unremovable. This one you can remove. So now that it's bolted back in, there's one final piece that needs to be added, and that is a lovely little plate.
That is the shiny new exhaust fitted. Big shout out to DS Auto Works for doing that. Now, me and Phil fitted this, which is a diesel heater, which is like a mini engine. So it needs an exhaust.
I'll be fitting that then, shall I? This is the exhaust for the diesel heater. It is fully insulated, so we should be able to touch this while it's running. Not that I recommend that. And it also comes with this little shroud, and that's going to sit around here somewhere. So let's get it marked out and cut a hole in our boat. The reason I've marked these holes here, even though that's an oval, it is central to the hole. So that's going to give me a reference so we can mark the center of all them marks and then start drilling a big old hole. This won't give us the finished hole, but it will get us close. We're trying to keep these holes as tight as possible. We don't want anything oversized because it just looks messy. So we mark the center and then use a stepper bit to drill it out to its final size. Even though that is a lovely circle hole, I've got to use a sander and round it off in an odd shape, because if you look on the back, that's where it comes down. So we're just going to round out the edge, not as dramatic as that, and hopefully this will fit right in. And I do that using some hand files because I really like to. Definitely not because I forgot to buy new belts for my electric sander. And as easy as that. I've hand filed the hole. Now, the exhaust has got to be fed through and it's going to sit like this in the boat. The reason is, when we're going through the water at 600 knots, we don't want water, so if we mount it like that, if water gets in here, it's going to sit in our exhaust. If we mount it like this, water can't get up and in. There's two sections to our exhaust, so there's this outer sheath, the insulation, well there's three sections, and then the middle, it's the middle we've got to connect to this, but it is very tight, so we think we're going to feed it out, get this on, and then get this bolted. Now we're going to drill to bolt it in. We've already drilled one to hold it because it's quite heavy with the exhaust on. I'm going to drill the rest and then we're going to take it back off to do another step. Because this is outside and there's probably going to be a lot of water splashing, we're going to be using some gasket maker, so we used this on our sump before, to seal around the opening and also the holes we've just drilled. And we're using this because obviously it's high temperature, oil resistant, all the things that are going to be near this exhaust. Like everything else, it's all about trying to preserve this boat for as long as possible. So every step we do, we try to improve how it was before. As well as behind, I'm also going to seal from that side to that side, up and over. I've sealed only the top. We're going to leave that, so water that comes down shouldn't be able to get in the top. But if anything was to get inside here, at least it can leak out of the bottom because of gravity. Although the exhaust was a tight fit, we still needed to add some clamps because we don't want that working its way off in the future. And now it's time for the second side, and that of course connects to our diesel heater. For those OCD members like me, you can see we are half in the black. I agree, not the best. However, we've got a metal band here so we can't go any lower. And you see this little tiny line here, that is our floor. So the exhaust is already right at the very top. So that's the only position we can get it. But I think it looks all right. Another job we've been putting off, even though it should be quite easy, is removing the tape from our little vents and drilling out the foam that's underneath. When we had this spray foamed, we opted to fill our vents completely. The reason we did that is because it was going to be a lot neater to drill out a perfect circle, and the insulation is going to be as tight to those vents as possible. So we just used the drill bit and rolled it around our brass fittings. These that I've just unwrapped and cleared all of the insulation out of are our fixed vents for the top half of the boat. So when you're on a boat like this, you need to have fixed ventilation. That's our understanding anyway. So we need to put on some little caps to stop any of the rainwater getting in. But before we do that, we want to change the colour of these from gold to black. Traditionally, these would have been brass and they would have been polished, which would have looked nice back in the day, but we're trying to make our boat a little bit more modern, so we think a nice gloss black looks a lot nicer against our green colour scheme. Can't believe it's been 24 hours already. Even though it had definitely been 24 hours, we had to be careful because the paint was a little bit tacky. Not the best tape line, but we do not care about that because we are adding a silicone seal around these just for that little bit of extra protection. But now it's time for our nice powder coated, what would you call these, mushrooms?
Big shout out to Van Secure. So he's our friend who done the locks on the vans and he offered to powder coat them for us.
Look at that. What an absolute legend. To install these, it is as simple as screwing them in. So that is exactly what we do.
So the reason why we want to seal it as well was because underneath, when we stripped out the interior, there was like rust all around the top bits, around the vents. So we assumed that these were letting water in. So we're gonna add an extra layer of protection.
An extra layer, plus it removes the lip that you would, now this is gonna be smooth, so water's not gonna wanna just get stuck there and stay there. It's gonna just... All of them are now installed, and I want to cover one thing that we see quite a bit in the comments when we said about this, and that was the height of our canal boat. Well, we have gained about 10 millimeters in height by adding this, so I think we're going to be good. One of the important things when you're travelling on a narrowboat is a horn, so we located one of the smallest ones we could find, and here it is. We've walked up and down the boat, we checked the back, didn't like it, we had it on the side, didn't really like it because you've got to walk up and down, and we've put it here, and we like this idea because now we can do tunnel runs like proper boy racers, and as we're going through the tunnels we go like ma 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 ma, moo, so then everybody gets annoyed. Now that we've got our horn to annoy everyone, we mark it up ready to fix it to the roof of our boat, and you guessed it, more riv nuts. In the holes we're going to be using the instant gasket, because that way it's going to create a gasket, which makes sense because we want to gasket it. Who would have thought a gasket maker making a gasket? Now that we had our plan, we get on with installing our riv nuts. The only difference with these ones are they're a lot smaller. These ones are only M4. That's our little nut certs in. So they're sealed on the outside. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a tiny piece on the inside, and that's going to help seal the threads.
Narrowboats need
a tunnel light.
So that is what we're going to add.
So let's add one. Before we show you the light we've picked, we need to fit the bracket to our roof. And we're going to go bang centre. That's the plan. Whether it ends up there, only time will tell. To get the marks, we measure left and right over and over again to make sure we are definitely central. And we've also set it back from the front, because don't forget, this canal boat is having canopies, so we need to make sure our light isn't going to interfere with them. Modern classic.
Yeah, classic circle.
Classic circle, modern LED. Because we have the patience of small children, we're not going to wait till it's all wired up, because no one's got time for that.
We are going to correctly wire it.
We're going to correctly wire it to a 12-volt source.
And a switch.
And a switch and a fuse.
And it's safe.
So let's get this thing wired up first, the light. Let's test that first.
That's bright.
You're going to be able to see to the moon. So you stood in front of the light, you should definitely stand in front of the horn. Face high.
Oh my God! That's loud.
Build is coming along amazingly. Unfortunately, that is all we've got time for in this video. Make sure you catch us on the next one, because I'm pretty sure we're going to be starting this thing. But for now, I will see you later.
And make sure you subscribe to the channel. Love you, bye.
And just remember, you can buy a ticket for this boat for just £5 per entry. Link is in the description below. Love you, bye.
You're doing the best filming.
Thanks.